When I returned from visiting my sick friend in Wyoming in 1887, the key in my hand no longer fit my own front door. Someone had changed the lock on the home I'd built for 30 years. 3 harrowing days later, I uncovered the truth. My son Ben had signed papers transferring my ranch, and his ambitious wife had met with a land speculator to have me declared incompetent, so they could steal everything Samuel and I bled to build. I am Martha Hayes, 68, widow of a hard-riding Wyoming rancher, and I thought kindness and sacrifice would protect me. But betrayal taught me something else. Your story doesn't end when they try to erase you. It begins again. If you're watching this and you feel afraid that what you've built your entire life could be stolen by your own family, afraid that your age makes you appear weak in others' eyes, afraid that your kindness and trust will be exploited, listen to me. You're wrong. Your story isn't over. It's only entering its most important chapter, the chapter where you learn to stand up for yourself. And this next chapter could be the most powerful of your entire life. The Wyoming dawn broke cold and clear, the kind of April morning that tricks you into thinking winter's finally done. I was up before the sun, same as I'd been for 30 years. My hands moved through the morning chores without thought, scattering grain for the chickens, checking the water trough, running my palm along the fence posts Samuel built the summer we paid off the land. That fence, rough-hewn pine, weathered gray now but still standing strong. I could close my eyes and see him there, shirt soaked through with sweat, driving each post deep into the Wyoming earth. "We're building something that'll last, Martha," he'd said, wiping his brow, "something nobody can take from us." He'd been right about the lasting part, wrong about the taking. I didn't know that yet, standing there in the cool dawn with my coffee going cold in my tin cup. The ranch stretched out before me, 2,000 acres of grazing land, 500 head of cattle, a barn Samuel raised with his own hands, and the house. Lord, that house. We'd started with a soddy, dirt walls and a canvas roof. Took us 15 years to build the 2-story frame house with real glass windows and a porch that faced west to catch the sunset. The land had cost us everything. Winters that froze the cattle where they stood. Summers so dry the creek ran to dust. The year the Shoshone nearly drove us out before 2 wolves convinced his people we meant to stay peaceful. Samuel's heart giving out on that very porch 8 years back. Coffee still warm in his cup. But we'd survived. I'd survived. And I'd kept it running. Me and the hands and the sheer stubborn will that this land demands of everyone who tries to tame it. "You're up early." I turned. Victoria stood in the doorway wrapped in a silk dressing gown that probably cost more than I paid my ranch hands in a month. Her dark hair was still pinned up perfect, not a strand out of place. She looked at my worn work dress, my boots caked in mud, and something flickered in her eyes. Pity, maybe, or disgust. "Same time I'm always up," I said, keeping my voice even. "You should rest more. At your age, all this rustic labor can't be good for you." She said rustic the way some folks say diseased. I bit back the first 3 replies that came to mind. Ranch doesn't run itself. "Well," she smiled thin and sharp. "That's what hired men are for, isn't it? You've earned your rest, Martha. You should take it." There was something in how she said earned, like I was a horse being put out to pasture. I turned back to my coffee. Let the moment pass, keeping the peace. That's what I told myself I was doing. "I'm heading to Clara Brennan's place this morning," I said. "She's been poorly since her sister passed. I'll be back Sunday by noon." Victoria's face brightened. Just a flicker, but I saw it. "Oh, how thoughtful. You take your time, Martha. Take all the time you need. Ben and I will manage perfectly fine." I left the note on the kitchen table anyway. Back Sunday by noon. Take care. Simple. Clear. The kind of note you leave for family you trust. I saddled my mare in the barn, checking the cinch twice out of habit. Through the open door, I could see 2 wolves riding past on the ridge, heading toward the creek. He raised one hand. I raised mine back. 30 years of neighborly respect. No words needed. The sun was fully up now, turning the plains gold. I swung into the saddle, took one last look at the house, my house, built with my husband's hands and my own sweat, and rode toward town. I didn't see Victoria watching from the window, that thin smile still on her face. Didn't see her turn back inside and pull a paper from her trunk, Ben's signature already drying at the bottom. Didn't know that by the time I came home, nothing would be mine anymore. I trusted them because they were family. But when does faith in your own blood become foolishness? Tell me, was I a good woman holding her family together, or just a fool who couldn't see betrayal standing right in front of her? I rode up the lane just past noon on Sunday, like I'd promised. The sky had turned gray while I was gone, clouds piling up over the mountains the way they do before a spring storm. The wind had teeth in it. My mare shook her head, uneasy, but I figured she was just tired from the ride. I should have listened to her. The ranch looked the same as I'd left it. Fence posts standing, barn door latched, smoke rising from the chimney, which meant someone had kept the fire going. That gave me a small measure of comfort as I dismounted, my knees stiff from 2 hours in the saddle. I tied the mare to the hitching post and climbed the 3 porch steps I'd swept 10,000 times. My hand went to my pocket, fingers closing around the iron key I'd carried for 30 years. The key Samuel had pressed into my palm the day we moved into this house, both of us covered in sawdust and grinning like fools. I slid it into the lock. It didn't turn. I pulled it out, checked it. Same key, same worn edges, same scratch across the bow where I'd dropped it once in the barn. I tried again, wiggling it the way you do when a lock's being stubborn. Nothing. That's when I really looked at the lock, new brass, shining even in the gray light. The kind of hardware you order from back east, expensive and solid. The kind that says civilization in a place that's still half wild. The kind I'd never ordered. My heart started beating faster, but I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe there'd been a break-in while I was gone. Maybe they'd changed it for safety and forgot to leave me the new key. Maybe... I knocked. 3 solid raps that echoed through the door. Silence. I knocked again, harder. Ben, Victoria, it's me, I'm back. Still nothing. But I could hear movement inside, the creak of floorboards, someone walking from the parlor toward the kitchen. I pressed my face close to the window, cupping my hands around my eyes. The curtains were drawn, but there was a gap, and through it I saw her. Victoria, standing in my front room in a green dress I'd never seen before. She was looking right at the door, right at me. Our eyes met. She turned and walked away. Slow, deliberate, like she had all the time in the world. The curtain shifted, and I saw Ben's shape behind it. Taller, broader. He didn't come to the door either. I rang the bell. The one Samuel had hung himself, salvaged from an old mission. It clanged loud enough to wake the dead. No one came. I stood there on that porch, the porch where Samuel died, where I'd shelled peas and mended shirts and watched the sun set over land I'd bled for, and the truth settled into my bones like winter cold. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't for my safety. They'd locked me out, on purpose. While I was gone, helping a friend who'd lost her sister, they'd changed the locks on my house. My house. The one I'd built from nothing, defended through droughts and hard winters and grief that should have killed me. The wind picked up, pulling at my skirts. My mare whinnied, nervous. Thunder rumbled in the distance. I looked down at my hands, calloused, scarred. The wedding ring Samuel had given me 40 years ago, worn thin but still there. These hands had built fence, delivered calves, buried a husband. These hands had earned every inch of this land, and my son, my own son, had locked them out. I tried the door one more time, pressed my palm flat against the wood Samuel had planed smooth, felt how solid it was, how well built, how it would stand for another 100 years, keeping out the wind and the cold and anyone who didn't belong, anyone like me apparently. I stepped back. The first drops of rain started to fall. I had nowhere to go. I rode into town in the rain, water running down my neck and soaking through to my skin. The stable owner, old Pete Garrison, took one look at my face and didn't ask questions, just took my mare's reins and pointed to the loft. "Hay's fresh," he said. "Help yourself." I'd known Pete 30 years, bought horses from him, sold him cattle. Never once had I needed to sleep in his barn like some drifter with nowhere else to go. I climbed the ladder with what dignity I had left and burrowed into the hay. It smelled sweet and dry, but it wasn't my bed, wasn't my home. I lay there listening to the rain drum on the roof and the horses shifting in their stalls below, and I couldn't stop shaking. Not from cold, from something worse. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Victoria's face in that window, the way she'd looked at me and then just walked away, like I was nothing, like 30 years of my life in that house meant less than the dirt on her fancy shoes. Around midnight, I gave up. I climbed back down the ladder, saddled my mare, Pete was asleep in his back room, and rode out into the darkness. I told myself I just needed to see the ranch one more time, needed to make sure it was real, that I hadn't imagined the whole terrible afternoon. But that was a lie. What I really needed was to understand, to hear them say it, whatever it was they were planning. The clouds had cleared, and the moon was bright enough to ride by. I approached from the north, keeping to the shadows, and tied my mare in a stand of cottonwoods 100 yards from the house. Then I crept forward on foot, feeling like a thief on my own land. The parlor window was cracked open despite the cold. Lamplight spilled out across the porch, and I could hear their voices, sharp with argument. "Told you she'd be too weak to fight back." That was Victoria, her Eastern accent more pronounced when she was angry. By week's end, Blackwell will have his offer ready. We'll have enough to start fresh in Philadelphia, away from this God-forsaken wilderness. My heart stopped. Blackwell. Horace Blackwell. The land speculator who'd been sniffing around Wyoming territory for the past year, buying up properties and selling them to railroad companies. I'd turned him down flat when he'd approached me last fall. "She's my mother." Ben's voice, weak and miserable. "This is her home." "This is land," Victoria snapped. "Valuable land, and she's an old woman who's going to die soon anyway. Would you rather wait until she's gone and split it with whatever charity she leaves it to, or take control now while we can still benefit?" Silence. Then Ben, quieter. "She raised me here, and now she's in the way." Victoria's voice went cold. "I didn't marry you to spend my life in a drafty house on the edge of nowhere, Benjamin. I married potential, but you've squandered every opportunity I've given you. This land is the only asset you have left. We're taking it." The deed's in her name. The deed can be challenged. You're her only son. You signed the papers I prepared. Blackwell has lawyers who specialize in this sort of thing. Contested inheritances, elderly incompetence. By the time any judge looks at it, we'll already have the money. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My own son. My own son had signed papers to steal my land while I was helping a grieving widow. "I don't know," Ben said, but there was no strength in it. Just the whine of a man who'd already made his choice and was looking for permission to live with it. "You don't have to know," Victoria said. "You just have to stay quiet and let me handle it. In 6 months, we'll be in Philadelphia. You'll never have to see another cow or smell another barn. Isn't that what you wanted when you left this place the first time?" I heard footsteps moving away, a door closing, then silence. I stood there in the darkness, my breath coming fast and shallow. The cold had seeped into my bones, but I barely felt it. All I felt was a rage so pure and bright it burned away everything else. The hurt, the confusion, the desperate hope that this was somehow a misunderstanding. They thought I was weak, thought 30 years on this land had made me soft enough to break. They were about to learn what it really made me. When you discover your own child has been plotting against you with a stranger, planning to steal everything you've built, is the anger you feel righteous, or does it make you just as cold as they are? Because I stood in those shadows and felt something shift inside me. Something that scared me almost as much as their betrayal did. I didn't sleep that night, just rode back to the stable, unsaddled my mare, and sat in the hay until the sky started to gray. Then I rode out again, this time toward the creek. I knew where to find him. 2 wolves fished the same bend every morning when the weather was fair, had for as long as I'd known him. 30 years of watching the seasons turn, and some things stayed constant. That gave me comfort when everything else was falling apart. The morning mist still hung over the water when I approached. He was there, sitting on a flat rock with his line in the current, patient as the stone itself. He didn't turn when my mare's hooves crunched on the gravel, but I knew he'd heard me coming from 100 yards out. 2 wolves, I said, dismounting. My voice came out rough from not sleeping. Woman who keeps her word. He reeled in his line slowly, a fat trout flashing silver in the dawn light. "You are troubled." It wasn't a question. I stood there on the bank, suddenly not sure how to begin. How do you tell someone that your own son has betrayed you, that the home you built is being stolen while you watch? "May I sit?" I asked. He nodded toward a log near the fire he'd built, where a battered coffee pot sat steaming. I sank down onto it, grateful for something solid beneath me. "I have watched your house," he said, gutting the trout with quick, practiced movements. 3 days passed. Something wrong. My throat tightened. "You saw?" "I see many things." He rinsed his hands in the creek. "The woman with yellow hair, the man from the east, dressed like a banker. They met 3 times. Once at your fence line, twice at the edge of your land where the old survey markers stand." My heart started pounding. "When?" "While you were gone. First time 2 days before you left. They spread papers on a wagon bed, maps, the kind that show where land can be divided, sold." He poured coffee into 2 tin cups, handed me one. "The man pointed at your house, said something about removing the obstacle." The yellow-haired woman laughed. I wrapped my hands around the cup, needing its warmth. "Did you hear anything else?" "The man spoke of lawyers, of papers that could make land change hands. The woman said, 'She's old, no one will question it.' The man said, 'My lawyers have done this before.' Elderly women, confused about property rights. The courts always side with the family." Two Wolves' face was impassive, but his eyes were hard. "They spoke of you like you were already dead." The rage I'd felt last night came flooding back, but colder now, sharper. "Why didn't you tell me?" "You were not here, and I was not certain what I heard meant what I thought it meant. White man's law is strange. Sometimes papers matter more than truth." He sipped his coffee. "But now you know. Now you ask. So I tell you." I stared into the creek, watching it flow over stones that had been there long before any of us. They changed the locks on my house. While I was helping Clara Brennan bury her grief, my son signed papers with a land speculator to steal my ranch. Two Wolves was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Your husband, Samuel. When the winter of the deep snow came, when my people were starving, he brought us cattle. Did not ask for payment, did not tell others, because he knew they would call him fool. He said, 'We share this land, we should not let each other die on it.' He met my eyes. I owed him a debt. Now I owe you. If you need me to speak truth to your lawmen, I will speak." Something in my chest loosened. Not hope, exactly, but something close to it. "They'll try to say I'm incompetent," I said. "Too old to manage property. They'll paint me as confused, failing." "Are you confused?" "No." "Are you failing?" "Not yet." He almost smiled. "Then we will make sure the truth is heard. The man from the east, Blackwell, I heard the woman call him. He stays at the hotel in town. Room at the end of the hall. He keeps his papers in a leather case, always with him." Two Wolves stood, stretched. "I have watched him too. He is the kind of man who thinks no one sees him. That makes him careless." I stood as well, legs steadier than they'd been in days. "Thank you." He inclined his head. "The land remembers who honors it. Your husband honored it. You honor it. That woman with yellow hair, she sees only money. The land knows the difference." I rode back toward town as the sun broke over the plains, turning everything gold. I still didn't have my house, still didn't have my son back. But I had something I hadn't had yesterday, a witness, proof, and a plan starting to form in my mind like ice, crystallizing on a winter pond. They thought I was alone. They were wrong. Clara Brennan's homestead sat in a hollow 3 miles west of town, a small cabin with a leaning porch and a roof that needed patching. It wasn't much, but it was hers, earned through her husband's blood in the mines and kept through her own stubborn will after he was gone. She was hanging laundry when I rode up, her gray hair escaping from its pins. She took one look at my face and dropped the shirt she was holding. "Martha." Not a question, just my name, said the way you'd say a prayer over someone dying. I dismounted, and my legs nearly gave out. I hadn't eaten since yesterday, hadn't slept in 2 days. Clara caught my elbow and steered me inside, sat me down at her rough-hewn table, and poured whiskey into 2 cups without asking if I wanted it. "Drink," she said. I drank. It burned going down, but it steadied me. "Now tell me." So I did. All of it. The locked door, the night in the stable, the conversation I'd overheard through the window, Victoria's cold calculation, Ben's weak compliance, Blackwell's scheme to paint me as incompetent and steal my land, 2 wolves' testimony about the secret meetings. Clara listened without interrupting, her face getting harder with each sentence. When I finished, she stood up and walked to the window, staring out at her scraggly garden like she was trying to calm herself before she spoke. "That scheming Eastern witch," she finally said, voice tight with fury. "And your son, God forgive me, Martha, but your son is a coward." I flinched, but I didn't argue. Couldn't. Clara turned back to me. "You can stay here, long as you need, forever if it comes to that. We'll make it work." "I don't want to stay here." The words came out harder than I meant them. "I want my home back." "Then we take it back." Clara sat down across from me, leaned forward. "Question is how. You could go legal, file papers with the territorial court, get a judge involved. But that takes months, costs money you'd have to borrow, and judges in these parts." She shook her head. "They tend to favor sons over mothers, family unity and all that rot." "What's the other option?" "You could appeal to the community, get the neighbors involved, shame Ben into doing right. But that's risky too. Some folks will say a son deserves his inheritance, that you should step aside graceful. Others will support you, but not enough to make a difference if Ben and Victoria dig in." I stared into my whiskey. "So I'm supposed to just accept it? Let them steal everything Samuel and I built? Hell no." Clara's eyes flashed. "I'm saying the law's too slow and the community's too divided, which leaves the third option." "What's that?" "Frontier justice." She said it flat, matter of fact. "You go back there tomorrow morning. You bring a locksmith. There's one in town. Owes me a favor. You change those locks right back. You put that woman's belongings on the porch, and you tell them both to get off your land. They'll fight it. Let them try. You've got the deed in your name. You've got 2 wolves as a witness to their scheming. You've got 30 years of respect in this territory, and you've got something they don't." "What's that?" "The willingness to do what needs doing." Clara reached across the table, gripped my hand. "You've survived things that would have killed softer women, Martha. You buried a husband. You built a ranch from nothing. You've got more steel in you than that city girl will ever understand." I looked at our hands, both of us with calluses, scars, the kind of roughness that comes from real work, widow's hands, survivor's hands. "What if I lose?" I asked quietly. "What if you don't fight?" Clara squeezed harder. "What if you let them take it without even trying? You think you could live with that?" I thought about Samuel's fence posts, the porch where he'd died, the bedroom where we'd loved each other for 38 years, the kitchen where I'd fed my son every morning of his childhood. "No," I said, "I couldn't." "Then tomorrow we go to war." Clara stood, walked to the corner where she kept her rifle, checked it with practiced hands. Not with bullets, but with the kind of backbone these frontier women are known for. We show them what it costs to cross someone who's already survived the worst this land can throw at her. I stood too, steadier now. The whiskey had warmed me, but Clara's words had done something more. They'd reminded me who I was before grief and shock had knocked me sideways. "I'll need to be at the ranch by dawn," I said. "I'll ride with you. Bring the locksmith. We'll have you back in your house before they've finished their morning coffee." That night, I slept in Clara's spare room, really just a corner with a curtain and a thin mattress. But I slept, deep and dreamless. Because for the first time since I'd turned that key in a lock that no longer knew me, I had a plan. And come morning, I'd have my home back. We rode out before dawn, 3 of us, me, Clara, and old Emmett Stone, the locksmith who'd installed every lock in town for the past 20 years. He didn't ask questions, just brought his tools and a knowing look that said he'd seen this kind of thing before. The sky was just starting to gray when we reached the ranch. Frost covered everything, turning the world silver and silent. The house was dark, curtains drawn. They were still sleeping in my bed, under my roof, surrounded by my life. Not for long. "You're sure about this?" Emmett asked quietly, dismounting. I looked at the house Samuel and I had built. "I've never been more sure of anything." He nodded and got to work. His hands moved quick and practiced, removing the new brass lock Victoria had installed, replacing it with one even stronger. The sound of metal on metal seemed loud in the morning stillness, but no one stirred inside. City folks sleep late, I'd learned. The frontier rises with the sun. While Emmett worked, Clara and I moved Victoria's belongings to the porch. We did it carefully. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of claiming I'd damaged her things. Her trunks, her dresses, her fancy shoes that had never touched real dirt, her silver-backed hairbrush, her bottles of perfume, her books with their uncracked spines, everything that marked her as someone who'd never belonged here. The last thing I carried out was the silk dressing gown she'd worn that first morning, when she'd looked at my work dress with such disdain. I folded it neatly and laid it on top of her largest trunk. "Done," Emmett said, testing the new lock. He handed me 2 keys. "This one's stronger than what she put in. Won't be easy to break." I closed my fingers around the keys. They were warm from his hands, solid and real. "Thank you, Emmett." "No thanks needed. Your husband once lent me money when my wife was sick, didn't ask for it back. I don't forget." He tipped his hat. "I'll wait down the road a piece, case you need a witness." As he led his horse away, the front door rattled, then came pounding. "What is this?" Victoria's voice, shrill with outrage. "Why won't this door open?" I stood at the bottom of the porch steps, Clara beside me, took a breath, then another. The pounding got louder. "Martha! Martha, I know you're out there. Open this door immediately." "No," I said, loud enough to carry. Silence. Then the window sash scraped up, and Victoria's face appeared, hair wild, eyes blazing. She was still in her nightdress, no silk dressing gown to hide behind now. "What have you done?" she demanded. "I changed the locks," I said, keeping my voice level, "on my house, my ranch, the property that's been in my name for 30 years. "You can't, Ben!" She disappeared from the window. More shouting inside, Ben's voice now confused and groggy. The front door shook as they tried to force it, but Emmett's work was solid. After a moment, they gave up, and Victoria appeared on the porch. Must have gone out the kitchen door. She was wrapped in a blanket, feet bare, face twisted with fury. "This is illegal," she spat. "You can't lock us out of our own home." "Your home?" I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. "This ranch was built by my husband's hands and my own sweat. You've been here 6 months. It's not yours. It never was." "Ben!" Victoria shrieked over her shoulder. "Tell her, show her the papers." Ben emerged behind her, dressed hastily, looking between us like a man watching his world split in two. He held a folded document in his shaking hands. "Mom," he started, voice cracking. We show her." Victoria snatched the paper from him, thrust it toward me. "Ben signed the ranch over to me. It's legal, witnessed. This property is mine now, and you're trespassing." I looked at the paper, saw Ben's signature at the bottom, saw the date, 3 days before I'd left for Clara's, saw the lawyer's seal from Blackwell's firm. My heart should have sunk, should have broken. But all I felt was that cold, hard certainty growing stronger. "We'll see about that," I said quietly. "You don't know frontier law like I do. You don't know what a deed means out here, or what a court will say about a son trying to steal from his mother while she was caring for a dying friend." Victoria's face went pale, then red. "You're an old woman. No one will believe you over us." I smiled, not warm, not kind. "They'll believe 2 wolves. They'll believe the locksmith. They'll believe 30 years of me keeping my word in this territory." I took a step closer. "And they'll believe that you're a scheming Eastern woman who thought she could take what wasn't hers." "Ben," Victoria turned to him, voice sharp, "say something." But Ben just stood there, paper hanging limp in his hand, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time, or maybe seeing himself. By the time the sun cleared the eastern plains, we had an audience. Word travels fast in small territories. Emmett had been seen riding out with us. The Johnsons, whose land bordered mine to the south, had spotted the commotion. Within an hour, a dozen neighbors sat on horseback at the edge of my property, watching like this was theater, which I suppose it was. Frontier justice always draws a crowd. Ben stood on the porch in his hastily buttoned shirt, that damn paper still in his hand. He looked between me and Victoria like a man drowning, reaching for anything solid. "Ben," Victoria said, her voice sharp as a whip crack, "tell your mother this is over. Tell her the ranch is ours now, legally. Show some backbone." I watched my son's face, saw him open his mouth, close it, open it again. "Mom," he finally said, voice barely above a whisper. I thought." "You thought what?" I kept my voice level, but every word carried across the yard. That I'd just accept it? That I'd walk away from 30 years of my life because you signed a paper behind my back? "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said miserably. "Victoria said it was just to protect the property, to make sure it stayed in the family if anything happened to you." "To protect it from me, you mean?" I pulled the deed from my coat pocket. The original, with my name and Samuel's, dated 1857. 30 years of ownership, clear as day. This is what matters out here, Ben. Not some paper your wife had drawn up by a land speculator's lawyer. This deed, recorded, witnessed, paid for with blood and sweat. Victoria's face went white, then red. That deed doesn't matter if you're declared incompetent. If you can't manage the property— "Incompetent?" A new voice cut across the yard. 2 wolves riding up on his paint horse, moving with that unhurried grace that made every motion look deliberate. He stopped at the edge of the gathering, but his voice carried clear. "Woman who keeps her word is many things. Incompetent is not one of them." Victoria whirled. "Who is this?" "He has no business." "I have business," 2 wolves said calmly. "I have eyes. I have seen things." He looked at Martha, then at the crowd. 3 times I watched the yellow-haired woman meet with the man from the east, the one who buys land and sells it to the railroad. They spread maps. They talked of removing obstacles. They talked of making an old woman seem confused, unable to manage her affairs. A murmur ran through the gathered neighbors. "That's a lie!" Victoria's voice climbed higher. "He's lying to help her. You can't trust—" "Can't trust what?" Clara stepped forward, her voice cutting. "A man who's lived here 30 years, who's never broken his word? Or should we trust an Eastern woman who's been here 6 months and already scheming to steal land?" "I'm not stealing anything." Victoria turned back to Ben, desperate now. "Ben, tell them. Tell them about the papers, about how your mother's been forgetful, how she can't manage the accounts anymore." "I've never been forgetful." I said it quiet, but it silenced her. "I know every head of cattle on this ranch. I know every debt, every payment, every inch of fence line. I know the name of every person here watching us." I gestured to the crowd. Tom Johnson, Sarah Chen, Pete Garrison, the Kowalski brothers. I know who helped me when Samuel died. I know who I helped through hard winters. I know this land and these people, and they know me. More murmurs. Heads nodding. Marshal Wade Cooper rode up then, his badge catching the morning light. He'd been watching from a distance, but now he moved closer, his weathered face unreadable. "Martha," he said, tipping his hat, "heard there was a dispute." "Not a dispute, Marshal. A theft attempt." I held up the deed. "This property is mine. Has been for 30 years. My son's wife tried to change the locks while I was helping a sick friend. I changed them back." Cooper looked at Victoria, at Ben, at the paper still clutched in Ben's hand. "That document legal?" "Perfectly legal," Victoria said quickly. "Ben signed it willingly. It transfers ownership." "A man can't transfer what isn't his," Cooper said mildly. "Property's in Martha's name. Always has been, unless she signed it over." He looked at me. "Did you?" "No." "Then this is a family matter, not a legal one." He settled back in his saddle. "Though I'd say trying to claim someone else's property through forged transfers might be fraud. Territorial courts don't look kindly on that." Victoria's face crumbled. She grabbed Ben's arm. "Tell them. Tell them you have rights. You're her son. This should be yours." Ben looked at her hand on his arm, looked at me, looked at the crowd of people who'd known him since he was a boy. "Victoria," he said slowly, Maybe we should what?" Her voice turned vicious. "Give up? Walk away? I didn't marry you to stay poor, Benjamin. I married you because you said this ranch was worth something. You said we'd have a future. but you're too weak to take it, even when it's handed to you." The crowd went silent. Ben's face drained of color. "Victoria, if you won't support me in this," she said, voice cold and clear, "then I'm leaving, today, and I'm not coming back to this backward, primitive wasteland or to the coward who couldn't even stand up to his own mother." She waited. We all waited. Ben looked at me. Really looked, maybe for the first time in years, and said nothing. Victoria's ultimatum hung in the air like gun smoke. Ben stood frozen, caught between the woman who'd raised him and the woman who'd just threatened to leave him. He swallowed hard. "I'll get your things." It wasn't a choice. It was a retreat. He walked to the porch where Victoria's belongings sat, started gathering her trunks. That's when I saw his hands stop on the smallest one, the leather case she always kept locked. The latch had come loose in the moving. Ben lifted the lid. I watched his face change, watched color drain from it like water from a broken bucket. He pulled out a stack of letters tied with ribbon. His hands shook as he untied them, read the first one, then the second. Then he looked up at Victoria with an expression I'd never seen on my son's face before. Betrayal. Pure and absolute. "What is this?" His voice came out strangled. "What the hell is this, Victoria?" She went pale. "Ben, don't!" But he was already reading aloud, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Dear Mrs. Hayes, as discussed, our offer of $12,000 for the Hayes property stands. Once the deed is transferred to your name, we can proceed with the sale. Your portion will be $8,000, with the remainder covering legal fees and the necessary documentation to prove your husband's mother incompetent." The crowd went dead silent. Ben's hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. "You were going to sell it? Sell everything and take the money?" "Ben, let me explain. We've arranged passage for you to Philadelphia on the 15th, he continued reading, voice rising. "Your husband need not accompany you. In fact, given his attachment to the property, it may be simpler if he remains unaware until after the transaction is complete." He looked up at her, and I saw my son break. Not just his composure, something deeper. The last bit of faith he'd been clinging to. "You were going to leave me," he said. "Take everything and just leave me." Victoria's face hardened. "You were never going to amount to anything, Benjamin. I gave you every chance, but you're weak, just like your mother said you were." "I never said that," I said quietly. "You didn't have to." Victoria turned on me, all pretense gone. I saw it the moment I met him, a grown man still seeking his mother's approval, still living in his dead father's shadow. I thought I could make something of him, but you can't make steel from mud. The cruelty in her voice silenced even the wind. Ben dropped the letters. They scattered across the porch like dead leaves. "Get out," he said. "What?" "Get out." His voice was stronger now. "Take your things and get out. Go to Philadelphia. Go wherever you want. But you're not taking my mother's ranch. You're not taking anything." Victoria stared at him, then at the crowd, then at me. For the first time since I'd met her, she had no words, no manipulation, no plan. Marshall Cooper cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'd suggest you collect your belongings and find other accommodations. Today." She grabbed what she could carry, left the rest, walked down that porch with her head high, but everyone saw the truth now, saw what she'd been all along, a thief, a liar, and now nothing. The crowd dispersed slowly, neighbors tipping hats as they rode off. Some offered quiet words of support, others just nodded, understanding what had passed here was bigger than a property dispute. It was a line drawn between what we owe family and what we owe ourselves. Ben stood alone on the porch, Victoria's abandoned belongings scattered around him like wreckage. He looked smaller somehow, older. "Mom," he said when only Clara, the marshal, and 2 wolves remained. "I'm sorry. I don't know what to say." I looked at my son, at the man who'd signed papers to steal my home, who'd stood silent while his wife plotted against me, who'd only found his backbone when he realized he'd been betrayed too. "I know you are," I said, "but sorry doesn't give me back the nights I slept in a stable, doesn't erase what you were willing to do." He flinched like I'd struck him. "I know, she made it sound reasonable, like we were protecting the ranch, protecting you." From myself? I shook my head. No, Ben. You knew what you were doing. You just didn't think I'd fight back. Silence. He couldn't argue because it was true. You can stay, I said finally, but not in the house, the bunkhouse. You'll work the ranch like any other hand, earn your meals, earn your place, and maybe, if you prove you understand what you almost destroyed, we'll talk about what comes next. The bunkhouse. He said it like he was testing the weight of the word, understanding, maybe for the first time, what it meant to start over at the bottom. That's the offer. Take it or don't. He looked at the house, the home where he'd grown up, where his father had died, where he'd thrown away his mother's trust for a woman who'd never loved him at all. I'll take it, he said quietly. Thank you. I didn't say you're welcome. Didn't feel it yet. Marshall Cooper cleared his throat. Martha, you'll want to update your will. Make sure this property's protected legal, not just by deed. Already planned on it. We went inside, my house, my kitchen, my table, and I signed new papers while the marshal and Clara witnessed. The ranch would stay mine until I died. After that, it would go to Clara's niece, a young woman who'd worked hard all her life and understood what land meant. Ben could earn it back, but he'd have to earn it. When the marshal left, Clara squeezed my hand. You did right. Did I? I looked out the window at Ben carrying his belongings to the bunkhouse, his shoulders bent under more than just the weight of his trunk. Feels like I just lost my son. You lost the son you thought you had, Clara said gently, but maybe you'll find the one he could still become. Maybe. Or maybe some things, once broken, stay broken. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time in days. The house was quiet, empty in a way it hadn't been even when I lived alone. But it was mine. A week passed, then another. The world didn't end. The ranch kept turning, same as it always had. I sat on the porch most evenings now, watching the Wyoming sky turn from gold to purple to deep blue. My coffee cup, the same battered tin one Samuel had drunk from, warm in my hands. The air smelled of sage and coming autumn. In the distance, I could see Ben working with the cattle. He'd lost weight, gained calluses, stopped talking about Philadelphia or city life or anything that wasn't the work right in front of him. I didn't know if it would last. Didn't know if he'd truly learn what this land demanded, or if he'd just be going through motions until I died and he could sell it all. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I'd drawn my lines. The rest was up to him. 2 wolves rode past on the ridge, same as he had for 30 years. Raised one hand. I raised mine back. Some things didn't need words. Clara came by that evening, bringing bread and gossip from town. We sat together as the sun set, 2 widows who'd survived what should have broken us. You did good, she said quietly. Did I? I looked at the house, the land, the fence posts Samuel had built. Feels like I just broke what was left of my family. You protected what mattered. That's different. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. But I was still here. Still standing on land I'd earned with my own hands, still breathing Wyoming air and watching Wyoming sunsets. The land remembers everything, every promise kept, every winter survived, every stand taken when it would have been easier to bend. And I remembered too. What it cost to build this place, what it cost to keep it, what it cost to refuse to let it be taken. Some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight leaves scars. Especially then. Let me tell you what nobody tells you about standing your ground. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like loss. I got my ranch back, but I lost the son I thought I had. Maybe I never really had him at all. But here's what I gained. Myself. My dignity. My right to exist in the space I'd earned through 30 years of blood and sweat. In the 1880s, they had 1,000 ways to make women like me disappear. Legal papers, family pressure, whispers about being too old to manage. I refused every single one. My husband Samuel used to say, the land remembers everything. He was right. It remembers who fought for it, who honored it, who refused to let it be stolen by people who saw only money where we saw home.